Everybody, we're just so thrilled that you're here to join us today. My name is Justin. I work at Bereave. I'm going to be your host today. This is the Lost Leaders Live podcast, where we help HR leaders build better support systems for their people, really exploring the human side of these systems and the business impact of getting them right or potentially getting them wrong. So each month we sit down with HR leaders and workplace experts who have lived it, right? They've been in it, the wins, the losses, the lessons that come with leading people through change. And together we really want to explore empathy and leadership and strategy and how they all intersect and what you can do right now to build a healthier, high-performing organization. And the reason that we do these programs, because we get asked this, it's like, hey, you're a death company, right? But we're on this mission to help companies provide the absolute best possible bereavement response when their employees suffer a loss. And in that pursuit, we get to meet these incredible people that just bring so much lived experience to business leaders and are really working to build more supportive workplaces. So this is really our attempt and our effort to get them in front of you. I mentioned the chat's open, so we'll monitor for questions. Highly encourage questions. It's a big opportunity here to really tap into some smart folks. Also, we're trying out a new feature. If you look in the, I think, bottom left of your screen, I think it says live call-in. You can actually call in and we'll accept it and we'll put you on the show live as part of the discussion to answer your question. So it's like calling into a radio show, but with your video. So you don't have to do it, but we've never done it. So give it a shot if we can. Lots of Bereave bucks. We'll pass out some Bereave bucks today. I still don't know what those are, but I talk about them a lot.
Song request.
Yeah, we should. That'd be great. You're singing or am I singing?
No.
Right. We're going to go to 45 past the hour, and we'll get the recordings out sooner than later. Now, you're here for Jessica Winder. Jessica is a chief people officer, a co-founder, career coach, and author, among other things. She's a 3-time former VP or SVP of people and a career HR leader, really across multiple industries, which is pretty interesting to think about. I've known Jessica for, I don't know, probably about a year. We've kind of crossed paths a couple of times, and what I've come to find is that she's a really sought-after voice in the people and leadership space. And I hope you're connected to her on LinkedIn, along with the other 110,000 people or something like that that are learning from you. You're bold and mostly unfiltered leadership and corporate takes, which are fantastic and thought-provoking. Originally from Texas, Jessica now calls Vegas home, which she mentioned, where she lives with her husband and 2 sets of twins. That's 2 sets of twins. Jessica, welcome to Lost Leaders.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. This is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah. So we asked you to join because of your depth of expertise and thoughtfulness, and I think, putting it simply, the world feels super heavy right now, probably extra heavy than normal. And we talk to people every day and we hear about how it's impacting their work and their lives outside of work and then how those two collide. I'm curious, when you look at the landscape that HR leaders are navigating right now, we're talking politically, socially, economically, is there like a word or phrase that comes to mind?
A lot of them.
Yeah, okay.
I'm like, a lot of them, some of them not appropriate. No, I think it feels, from an HR standpoint, it feels like a rock. That's the word I would use. Like, it's like a heavy rock, and like, who's supposed to hold it? So one of the things that, a quote that I love that says, like, just because I can carry it doesn't mean it's easy. So like, just because I can carry this weight as HR, I can talk to you through, what you're going on in your life, doesn't mean it's not hard for me too. So yeah, I think it's a rock, and it's like, and people are like, oh no, this isn't my rock, this is your rock. And it's like, okay, well, who is supposed to help? Like, who's coming to help, or who's the one who's leading is my question.
Yeah, and it feels like I'm just speaking from a non-HR perspective in my career. When I have felt like there is a rock that has been dropped on my desk or on my back or on my head or whatever, I go to one of 2 places. I go to my manager or I go to HR.
Yep.
Are there other places that people might go that inside of an organization that we should also be thinking about as we talk here?
I think a lot of people don't realize, and depending on what the topic is, because if it's a topic that you feel like you can talk to your manager about or your HR person about, I highly encourage you to do that. But if it's topics that you don't feel like you can do that, then, obviously it's like the EAP, which is obviously through the company, but they don't report any of that information to the company. So that's definitely a resource. Obviously, also your peers, like, I always say, like, that your job is not your family, but they can be your friend. So you can have your peers or your coworkers that you feel like you can confide in, you can give them insight. So, but you need somebody, like, to the point in the chat from about it's heavy, like, it is heavy. And so you need someone to be able to talk to, because we all have seen the statistics on the epidemic of loneliness. That also shows up in the workplace.
Yeah, no doubt. So as you're thinking about the heaviness and the rock and everything that's going on, is there a moment like, and I wrote down this question and I think there's an obvious answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Is there a moment in your career where, like, the external world just crashed into the workplace in a way that you just weren't prepared for?
Do you want, like, should I go super personal with this one?
I mean, yeah. Well, so I was thinking about it from the perspective of, like, you're an HR leader and something happens big and you weren't prepared, right? Or I mean, if it's more personal and you're open to that too, let's let it rip.
Well, I'll give you twofold. So one, obviously, I specifically remember March 13th, 2020, writing an email to the whole company. And at the time, I want to know, I was working for a telehealth mental health company for college students. I literally sent out an email to the whole company and was like, hey, something's going on with this virus. Everybody go work from home for like 2 weeks. Then we'll see you in the office. We never went back to the office. Never went back. So obviously that did what it did. But on a more personal note, I talk really openly about addiction. And so one of the things that I talk about is that, like, this was thankfully right before the pandemic, but I got sober on January 13th, 2020. And so this was something that, like, we talk about, like, you bring your whole self to work. Well, I was absolutely struggling with addiction and a director of HR. And so that is something that I don't think we talk enough about, of, like, these are things that people have going on in their life. And it doesn't have to be addiction. It can be anything, really, that you have going on that you're struggling with and you're still doing your job. So one of the stories I talk about is, personally, I got into an unfortunate situation where I got a DUI. I literally this was over a holiday weekend. I went back to work the next week and got a promotion. No one knew what was going on. Like, I was living basically two different lives. And so I always want to, like, bring that up of, like, people are struggling and you have no idea. And I talk so openly about it. And so I've had so many people that have come to me on LinkedIn and said, like, hey, I'm actively in addiction right now and my job doesn't know, what do I do? So it's almost like something I'm now coaching people through, of, like, how to get help, how to talk to someone. But I think that's one where people don't see it as much because people just choose not to talk about it.
Sure.
So yeah.
Sure. So is the assumption, like, from an HR perspective or even managers, like, should we just be assuming that everybody is going through something? Because I feel like it's almost the exact opposite. Like, we act like nobody or everybody's going through nothing unless we hear about it.
Yeah, we assume that, like, oh, everything is fine if I don't know.
Right.
I'm the perfect example of my job was everything to me, so I was great at my job. Like, no one knew. Matter of fact, the boss that I had at the time, she and I have, like, reconnected years later, and she's like, I had no idea. Like, I had no idea you were in active addiction. And so I definitely think it's not like I'm telling you to go, like, make sure your people aren't doing X. Like, I'm not saying that. That's not my vibe. I am just saying you don't know what everyone's going through. And it could be nothing to do with them. It could be they're not getting any sleep because they have a kid. They are going through a divorce. They have somebody really close to them pass away. All these things. Somebody's going through cancer treatment. I have a close friend right now who, her little sister, who's like 26, is going through, like, stage 4 cancer. She's not able to get leave from her job, so it's because her sister is obviously not her partner or her kids, so she can't even get FMLA. So those things are things that are heavy that are happening outside of what's going on in the larger world.
Yeah. So, the thought about the world, and then you're talking about like our own individual worlds, and that includes HR leaders. Like,
Yes.
HR leaders are not
You're not
they're not exempt from having their own lives. So, when you think about like the fact that I talked about that rock, I showed up to HR. I'm like, hey, HR, here's my rock, right?
Yeah.
Help me. When you think about how HR leaders are almost expected to almost hold space or to provide some guidance across wildly different lived experiences, and then you get into the other world stuff, it might be economic, it might be political, right?
Financial.
How do you think, financial, how do you think about that responsibility without losing your own footing, because you're that person, you're a person and a human too.
Yeah. So with this question, I want to talk about, I sometimes say, like, I feel like HR is like the most hated but needed person in the company sometimes, because, obviously if you go online, you're going to see that, like, we don't even need HR. HR isn't your friend. Like the peanut committee.
Yeah.
But to your point, when you have a problem or when you have something you need, that's the person that you go to. So with that in mind, I employ people to remember that HR also works for the same company. So they are working for the company too. Obviously, part of their job is to help you, and I think that is part of our job. I truly think like HR is there to help and to support and give you guidance on what you need. However, they also work for the same company. They're also in the same environment. They're also going through the same economic, financial, whatever situation is. So I just employ people to really think through that. And I'm not saying don't talk to them, but I am saying, like, know what you're putting on them as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess if I'm an HR leader and I've got, maybe somebody in my family is going through those treatments that you mentioned, and there is all of the heaviness of the world outside for me, just like they are for all employees. But then there are several hundred people coming to me and putting things on all their rocks on my desk. Like, how are there any tips that you've learned, or anything that HR leaders can be thinking about to almost take care of themselves, I suppose, in these moments in particular?
I have found for me the only way is through community. So I now have, and I've built it over time, people that most of them actually I have never worked with like in a job together, but like HR peers that I have met through LinkedIn or through conferences or through networking that are now my people. So when these things happen, I have a group chat that I can text and say, this is what's going on with one of my employees. Have you had this happen? I recently had to do that. We had an employee who unfortunately had like a safety issue with a spouse. And I had to text this group chat and say, do I call the police? Does she call the police? Is she safe to come here? How do we get her to safety? Do we take her to a shelter? Like, like what would someone do in this situation? And so I definitely think community is the only way, because then you also, HR is very lonely, because it's not like I can go talk to somebody in the company and ask this question, because I don't want to put this person's safety at risk. So I need to ask a group of HR people that might have been through it. And like, obviously anonymous, not saying anyone's name or anything like that, but this is the situation. Have you dealt with this before? Yeah.
And it feels like there are a handful of those communities out there, and I hope that's really what they're meant for. Is that, but to be able to step outside of the walls of the workplace, or figurative walls, to be able to get that guidance feels like a really important thing. What about just like taking care of yourself, right? You've got the community. You mentioned EAP earlier. I feel like sometimes, and this is just an observation, but I feel like sometimes HR folks tend to shoulder the burden without giving the oxygen mask first kind of thing.
Absolutely.
are there any places, maybe EAP, maybe community, any other things that you have contacts, people that you've worked with, confidants that they leverage to be able to kind of take care of themselves as well?
Well, another thing I'll say, and this sounds simple, but take your PTO. Take
Love it.
every day that is available to you.
Yeah.
So I previously worked somewhere, and this was many, many years ago, where people would like, it was like a badge of honor to say that you didn't take time off. And I remember thinking at the time how toxic that sounds, that you have time available, but you're not taking any time off. So that's one caveat, is that like take every single day that is available to you, go on vacation, step away, have strong boundaries of like, for example, for me, my strong boundary is that like when I leave work until about 8, which is when my kiddos go to sleep, I'm not available. Unless it's an emergency, I will not talk, because I get a limited amount of time with them and I want to spend it. I want to be focused.
Sure.
Now have I logged back in at like 8 o'clock at night and answer questions? I have. Like, sometimes, when you're in a chief people officer role, that's what you have to do. But I protect my time that is sacred for me. And so I'm very clear on like the protection of things that I want to be important to me. And so I think that gives me energy. So obviously I might be at work dealing with something really important, but my 2-year-old cares nothing about that. Okay. She wants her snacks. She wants her lovey. And like, she like
Sure.
enters me really quickly.
Yeah. Kids,
Not that big of a deal. Where are my snacks?
yeah, they don't care what you're doing. They don't care what you do for a living, what your
Like,
title
say
is, whatever. Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, where's my cereal? No doubt. I think about when times get hard, it's really, really easy to make mistakes, because a lot of times it's the first time that you've been through that specific experience. And just like anything, right? If it's not practiced, it becomes much more difficult. Are there any common mistakes, or maybe the most common mistake you see HR leaders make when times get hard, that maybe you've made and people can avoid in the future?
I would say people become, I feel like, more robotic. And I want to explain that. I feel like people become more like, this is the policy, da 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 da. Instead of taking a step back and being like, okay, I'm talking to another human. I'm not going to quote you the policy. I want to understand what's going on, and I want to understand how to help you. And the way that this has shown up for me is if we think about like terminations. So for terminations, normally people will say, well, here's your script. Say this, and this. Don't venture from the script. I strongly am against that. Like, if you are in a conversation with me, I literally think I'm going to talk to you like a human. And also I'm going to realize that the moment that I say that you're done here, you're not hearing anything I'm saying. Like, literally it goes out the window. So like, think about that. Like, I've told people you need to then have a conversation with them the next day, because right now they're not going to hear anything you just said. And also ask them, is there somebody you can call right now that can support you? When I've done that before in a meeting, and somebody was like, I didn't know you could do that. I'm like, why not? You just told this person that they're losing their job. They need somebody right now. Ask them who they can call. Get them to get somebody on the phone that they can talk to. Don't let them leave here in a daze of like, what just happened.
Right.
So just less robotic and more human.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we see it all the time in the work that we do, where managers and HR leaders go straight to a bereavement policy, as an example, and that's what they deliver when somebody says, "Hey, I just got this phone call. I got to go," and the conversation becomes around time off and a policy versus like, "Oh my goodness." And I think that's starting to change. Just even in the past couple of years, we've seen. People, it feels like people are much more aware in some of these moments, but the idea to remember that that this isn't a piece of paper, right? Like, this is a human on the other side, and maybe even asking questions to some degree when it's appropriate could be helpful.
And you can follow up with that stuff. So I always say, like, you can email them the policy and all that. That shouldn't be, you should not be quoting the handbook to people.
Sure.
Like, I can think of, like, get it away from me.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, you're thinking about the script, right? Like, why do you think the concept of the script exists and is so prevalent?
It's a legal document. It really is like to safeguard the company. Somewhere along the way that somebody got burned and they said the wrong thing. And so now people are like, I'm just going to read this script and that's it. And it's so dehumanizing to be like, let me just
Right.
read this to you instead of look you in your eyes and tell you this isn't working. You need to go somewhere else that it's going to work for you. Like
Yeah.
in that conversation, instead of just being a human, you're saying this is what it's supposed to be. This is also in my mind when we make rules for the exceptions. Most handbooks are just because somebody messed up. So one person messed up, now we got to put a rule. Another person messed up, we got a new rule. So it's that's is why I don't love handbooks because I think they're just a legal document. Like I think that should be done by legal, and then you should have like a culture book of this is the culture here, this is our expectations for you. But a handbook is literally just a legal document of all the things that if you go and you look at somebody's handbook, it basically tells you all the things somebody did wrong.
Right. In the past, it's like protect against this, protect against this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great point. We see it on bereavement leave policies all the time, and I think that one of the questions that we get asked when we're being asked about policy is like, well, what if somebody takes advantage of it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And
One person did it one time, and now everybody.
one person had 7 ants in 6 months die. Right. And that leader said this will never happen again. Right. Put it in the policy.
Yep.
You get one person that can die each year.
Yeah,
That's it.
That's it. But no,
Right.
like literally, if you go look at some of these old school handbooks, it's very much just everybody that did something wrong.
Yeah.
And I just don't think, why are we punishing everyone for one person's mistake? So just go back to just being human about it. Like this person is in need. This also comes up with, and I'm sure you know this, around like if someone has someone that has passed away, how close they are.
Sure.
I think that is bull.
Right.
Like,
Why do you think that?
because I just don't think that is how human relationships work. So if it's not your mother or your sibling or your father, then they don't matter to you. That's crazy. Like that. And also, I don't think that gives encounters to different cultures in the way that they see relationships. Like
Sure.
someone's, I was raised by my grandmother. So you're telling me that because it's my grandmother, but she's the one who raised me, that it's different.
Sure.
I better show up to work.
Sure.
That
Right.
doesn't make any sense. And so when you
Right.
make these policies of like who it must be, it's so I just think it's gross, really.
Right. Right. I mean, it's effectively the business telling its employees, basically assigning some sort of value
Yes.
to each type of relationship, right? I'm curious. You mentioned this culture book, and I'm intrigued. And Taylor mentioned it here too. I don't know that I've ever seen a culture book. Like what?
Yeah.
What is a culture
I
book?
can send you some that I've written. So I've written a couple at every tech company that I've been at. This has been my first thing that I do is I come in
Okay.
and I want to assess what is the culture. And I say this very clearly. What is the culture right now and what is it you want it to be? Because those are two different things. No, a lot of times we sell this like aspirational fairy tale dream of like, this is what it's like here, when that's not the reality of what it's like to work here. So for example, when I was at Refine Labs, which is a marketing agency, we did a culture book and we explained to people that like, hey, you're going to be getting customer calls really late. Like this is what it actually is. Because I think if you tell people this is what the environment is here, this is something we're trying to change, but this is what it is. Do you want to sign up for this? Some people will still say yes. But if most companies do this bait and switch of like, everyone's welcome here and bring your whole self to work. And then it doesn't add up.
Sure.
So the culture book is truly meant to be, what is it really like to work here? So do you have difficult clients? Do you have people that are going to be calling you late at night? Do you have some managers that have different expectations of their team? So there's like, I think you should have like an individual culture book for the whole company, but you should also have team books of like expectations from certain leaders or certain departments. And it gives people a real insight in what it's like to work there, not a fairy tale.
Sure. Right. Not just the careers page and what it says on the careers page. like what is it actual? And it's interesting you say that. I used to work for a company. I worked there for about 6.5 years as a sales leader, and the culture was one of those cultures that you read about in fairy tales, right? And there were people that we'd hire that I would check in with, 2 weeks down the line, 30 days down the line, and people would say, hey, I was really worried that what I saw from the outside that was so attractive wasn't actually going to be like this, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like the antenna is already up.
Yeah, for sure.
And I didn't mean for this whole show to end up about culture book, but it sounds like it could be used as almost a recruiting tool
It does.
to,
Like
to some
I
degree.
for that.
Did you?
I believe that when you have a culture book, it should actually be sent out in the interview process. So
Mm-hmm.
that is
Love
like
it.
one we actually would send that out, and then we had a separate document on like why you should work here,
Mm-hmm.
like basically kind of quote unquote selling the business and the
Sure.
product. And we would send those both out, and we would ask in the interview, did you read the culture book? Is this a culture that you want to sign up for? Depending
Yeah.
on the role, are you clear on like the expectations? If you're going to be customer focused or customer facing, your role, your hours are going to be long. Are you okay with that? Like we would just put it all on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think kind of to that point, and I had a question. My next question, you kind of walked right into it, is thinking about what can help steady a workforce during turbulent times. And as I think about that question, it becomes, that is a reactive question. And what you're doing with a culture book is setting the expectation early, right? And maybe it doesn't specifically say, hey, when life sucks, here's how the company's going to show up, but maybe it does, and maybe it could. So there is like this proactive nature by setting the tone early, that I don't think we probably think about enough, maybe.
Yeah.
Ashley Hurd, if you know Ashley, she's one of our advisors and an amazing human being. She kind of drilled that concept into my head of even just sitting down with your team. If you've got a team of 8 people and the leader sits down and says, hey, listen, I understand that things in life might be hard sometimes. When they get hard for anyone here, this is the process. These are the protocols. These are the things that are going to happen. Here's what you should expect from us, and here's what we expect from you in those times. And sometimes it's just like, we expect you to log off, right?
Yeah.
When you think about that culture book and recruiting, have you seen it show up? Like, is there an opportunity to pull that off the shelf later and use that almost as you would use like core values?
Absolutely. 100. And that's the purpose for it. And to your point about like, obviously this topic is like the world is shifting, it's heavy, it's a rock. But one of the things to help with heaviness is transparency. And we love the word transparency in HR.
Sure.
But we're not really talking about real transparency. And so like, it's like the caveat of like, oh, it's like a sneaky thing. And so I do think the culture book, it holds you accountable because it like, you're supposed to have core values in there. You're supposed to have like, this is what it's really like. We even made our own like we had a section in there about like, which was funny because most people hadn't heard of it before I put it in there, but it was about being a keyboard gangster. Like we don't have any tolerance for that. If you wouldn't say something to someone's face, don't say it behind the keyboard because we were a remote first company. So we had a whole section in there about respect for your peers and stuff. And so when people would read that, they'd be like, I can't believe you just said that. Like, don't be a keyboard gangster.
Right. Right.
And so when things are heavy, you want people to be honest with you. And so a culture book is part of that honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's such a proactive way to handle this. Are there any like reactive things, back to this question that I wrote, and now I'm almost regretting it, but I still think it's important, that can help steady a workforce, right? COVID hits, there's, social unrest, there's all of these things, war, whatever we're talking about. Is there anything that you've seen that just kind of helps steady folks?
This one is going to sound so simple, but it's actually not. It's hard for most leaders is to actually acknowledge it. So, for example, at the same company, unfortunately, I remember there being some type of school shooting. And we sent a message out to everyone that said like, hey, because we had parents that were like, I'm going to go get my kid right now.
It was in the area.
Like
in
I'm
the area. Okay.
Like we had people that lived in the area, and like we're checking on them. Where are you? Are your kids okay? Da da da.
Right.
And we sent out a message and acknowledged that, hey, I don't know if everybody has seen the news. If you need to log off. If you have client meetings, you can cancel them and you can move them. So the acknowledgement. I have worked places where there have been things going on that nobody ever acknowledged. Nobody ever said a word. And like, I'm watching the news on my phone as I'm doing my job, but nobody ever acknowledged it. So it sounds simple, but the pushback that I get from that, people say, well, then I would have to acknowledge something every day.
Right.
And that's so, I understand that because
Yeah.
that is the world that we live in. But
Sure.
acknowledge the things that are happening to your employees. So in this situation, we had people that were physically at the time in Nashville, and we're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they're literally like in their cars driving to get their kids because they're
Mm-hmm.
scared.
Yeah.
So acknowledge what's going on. If depending on, if obviously if you have a company that's international, or if it's like a local to one area, I feel like if
Mm-hmm.
it's local to one area, you're even better fit to acknowledge what's going on in your area. So say something about it. A lot of times we are
Right.
like, if we don't say nothing, then nothing. Well, just pretend it didn't happen. It's the
Sure.
literal elephant in the room.
Right, right, right. When you think about that communication, and you might not have answers to, you probably don't have answers to the things that are going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
That's not your job. But when you don't have answers and you want to communicate effectively, like. Talk a little bit about that. Is it just
Yeah.
making recommendations? Is it giving space? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, so and I've done this before for several situations that have come up with the war or like anything that's going on. We actually did something really interesting around the election. So when the elections come, obviously people will have a lot of feelings and a lot of things. We the day of the election and the day after, we actually were like, we're closed.
Right, really?
Do
Okay.
not log in. Everybody go be well. Do whatever
Yeah.
you got to do to come back.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny things like that, which I know most companies can't do that, won't do that. But that's like one thing
Right.
that we did. Another thing I want to acknowledge is even saying, I don't know the answers. So at the time when this stuff happened in Nashville, I did not have kids. And I literally said, I don't have kids. I don't know where you're going through. But here are the resources. So we reminded them of all the resources that we had. We had therapy. We at the time I think we were paying for one of the therapy apps. We were paying for mindness apps. Like we reminded them of all the things that they had available, and then said, if you need something else, please let me know. It can be personalized. A lot of times you think if you do something for one employee, you have to do it for all employees. That's actually a myth. If one employee is the one in this crisis. So another example is
Sure.
we had employees that were in California in the wildfires. We put employees in hotels because we're like, you are having to evacuate with your kids and your pets, and we paid for them to go to a hotel. That logic would say we have to pay for everybody to go to a hotel. But why?
Right. Right. Right.
No, just be a human and help them. So
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I love that, because I think you're right. There is and that probably comes back to the legal components.
Yes.
Right. And making sure you're operating on an equitable basis, when in reality, helping humans can be an equitable thing if you do it well.
Yeah.
What about managers, right? So we've talked about the HR perspective here, and I often think about my own management journey on how ill-equipped I have been, and really maybe nobody's fault but my own, but ill-equipped in certain situations. When things are going right, HR goes to the entire company. Is there anything that HR leaders should be thinking about in terms of like bringing groups of managers specifically together, because they're the ones that are kind of on the front lines with their teams?
Absolutely. I strongly believe in manager training, because the way that I think about it is like, don't give me your power as the HR person, because if you're the manager and you're the one who's directing what they do day to day, you're approving their leaves, you are the person for them. But anytime anything is wrong, you say, you go talk to HR. Why am I that person? Like, no, they need to be talking to you. So I believe part of HR's job is to train up managers, whether that is like giving them things to like, whether that's in a cohort manner, which is what I've done before, where you get all the managers that are new together and like they are a team together and you do trainings with them and help them, and then they can lean on each other. Or giving them a mentor of someone who's been a manager, who's a good manager, all those things. But there absolutely has to be some training. And most managers are what I consider to be battlefield promotions. You're the last one standing, you're now a manager.
Right.
Even if they don't want
Last
to.
one standing. Sure. Yeah. Just kind of on that note, I'm curious if you have had some sort of cadence or drumbeat or whatever you want to call it, that where managers are getting some guidance, training ideally, but at least some guidance through maybe a program, right? I've seen a lot of like ad hoc, right? Hey, couple times a year, we're bringing managers into a room and let's talk about how to talk about compensation,
Yeah.
right? Is there any sort of drumbeat that feels like it has been successful, where you're not pulling them too much, but you're giving them enough to continue to be successful?
I definitely think it's a couple of things. So I've seen it where there's like a monthly lunch and learn where they're learning about a certain topic and having to role play it. So we're going to role play how to turn someone. We're going to role play how to
Practice.
tell them they're underperforming. We're going to role play all of these things in a group setting so that you get real feedback. And to be honest, as a wannabe actress, I love those because I want to act like the crazy person. So I want to show people, like, I'm going to be the person try to fire me.
Yeah.
See how this
Right.
goes for you. You know?
Yeah.
And
I
then when
love
you
it.
actually have to do it, they don't act as crazy and you'll be fine.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a trauma experience.
Right.
So those are meant to be fun, but then also there needs to be, I think, some type of weekly, even if it's just 30 minutes of like a learning. So whether that's you're sending them a TED Talk, you're sending them an article or something like that. And I used to do this and I would just put it in Slack of like, here's your weekly, did you know as a manager? Did you know there was a statistic that came out that you have such an impact on your employees' mental health? So when you schedule meetings with them, please don't schedule a 4 o'clock Friday meeting. They think they're getting fired. You know,
Right.
giving them tips and tricks that I have learned along the way. And so that way it's like they're getting something weekly and then monthly they're doing actual scenarios.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. How do you think about equipping managers for like the heaviness everybody's rocks right now? Like there's kind of like a feeling of normalcy to some degree. Sometime I think there's usually always something going on that makes things feel heavy to somebody, but taking kind of a heightened view of kind of what's going on in our world right now. Is there preparation for that? Is it reactive by bringing people in? Like how do you think about that?
I definitely think right now we're in almost like a trauma state of people think that like to the point of like, well, if I had to acknowledge something, I'd have to acknowledge something every day. Like I definitely get that reaction because it feels like, well, it's just so overwhelming. Just come do your job. But that is just no longer the world that we live in. If we're not in the like Mad Men age where you could just be like, just do your job. I don't care what's going on in the world. People, especially the younger generation, they are not standing for that anymore. I have actually had someone leave the company because she said basically the company refused to acknowledge something that was very important to her that was going on in the world. And so she was like, I don't want to work here anymore. So people are actually making job decisions based on this stuff. So you need to acknowledge it. So for managers, I really do think it's the senior leadership because it all comes from the top. So if the senior leadership team is making this a priority of like, we want to acknowledge what's going on. We stand for XYZ, whatever the business stands for. Like if you're going to stand on it, but make sure employees know that.
Yeah. No, that's great. When you look back, and by the way, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. So if anybody wants to use that call-in feature, now is the great time to do that.
Call in.
Thinking back across your career, is there a moment of leadership where you got to witness some element of leadership happening that's really kind of stuck with you as a model for how to lead when things get super tough?
Absolutely. So my mentor, and she was my COO at the time. She's now the CEO of the business. Her name was Megan. Shout out to Megan. She is an extraordinary leader. Like she has the ability, and I told her this, like, you should work for the CIA or something. Like she has the ability to like almost like disarm you, but give you very hard feedback and make you feel also empowered. Like you leave speaking to her, like I can do this, but also you know what you did wrong. And there's a skill in that. And I don't think that most leaders unfortunately have that skill.
Sure. How do we get Megan to teach all leadership course on that?
Literally, well, what's funny is she has like, I think she's like coined this term, becoming a talent destination, and like helping companies become a talent destination. So I think eventually she's going to be a consultant that you can get to come help you, and I highly recommend.
Nice. And it's always interesting too. People with like those skills, I have found, and this happened a ton in sales when somebody would say, hey, Tim is doing an excellent job over here, and you go to Tim and you're like, hey, how are you doing that? He's like, I don't know.
natural.
I
Yeah,
yeah,
literally.
yeah. It's like I don't practice it. It's just something that happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it sounds like one of those things that maybe she's worked on, but also
Mhm.
might just
No, I think
be
it
something.
is. And we
Yeah.
always laugh because I am this is will come as no surprise. I don't normally take bad feedback well. Like, oh, you mean I'm not great? You know?
Right.
And so
Sure.
normally I'm very pushy. I push back. But with her, I'd
Mm-hmm.
be like, you're right. You're
Mm-hmm.
totally right. Like she has this
Mm-hmm.
ability to like get you bought in from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. And
Yeah.
it's a skill.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, before I ask you this last question here, are you going to I think you're going to transform
I
next
am.
week?
I will be
Okay.
speaking. I have 3 different speaking engagements at Transform.
What? That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. Well, we'll promote those out on LinkedIn. Make sure we're driving people your way. Although people are just gonna show up anyway because it's you. Um, but also, if anybody here is going to transform, find Jessica
Please do.
and raise your hand or high five along the way.
I would love to.
Jessica, what's giving you hope right now?
Actually, I feel like Transform is like HR summer camp. So I am excited to be like just
Yeah.
out and about, frolicking along and just being with my people. It gives me so
Yeah.
much energy and it gives me hope. Because, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
HR can feel lonely. But when you're like literally around thousands of HR people, you're like, okay, we can do this. So that is giving me hope that next week I'm going to be with my people.
Yeah. Community.
Yeah.
Back to community. That's great. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure as always sharing the screen with you and mostly just learning from you. Really appreciate your insight, your expertise. Really grateful. Jessica, where can people find you?
I would say LinkedIn. I literally post every day. So LinkedIn, you can definitely connect with me, or you can go over to my website, which is hiddengemcareercoaching.com. And I update stuff there all the time. I have a blog over there. I give some spicy takes on just about everything. I have a lot to say about everything, as you are not surprised by.
Cool. No, that's why you are who you are. I just popped Jessica's LinkedIn, and the website is here on your LinkedIn too,
Yeah.
as well, I believe. Right? Okay, perfect. Excellent. Also, before I forget, you mentioned to me recently that you're doing some keynote speaking now. I know you're doing some stuff at Transform, but you're also doing some like keynote stuff,
Yeah,
right? Can you
I
share a
am.
little bit about that?
Yeah, so the main topics that I talk about is burn HR to the ground and bring it back with something better. So I talk a lot about good trouble and what does it mean to be disruptive in HR. One of the other topics I talk about is being a mom, like being a leader and a mom, and what does that mean when you go out on leave and you come back. One of my keynotes is going to be about the audacity to interview pregnant. I interviewed for an SVP role when I was 4 months pregnant with my second set of twins. And I talk openly about that. And then I also do a lot of keynotes around compensation, being empowered to speak about money in corporate spaces.
Awesome. That's awesome. A couple of different paths there too for HR folks, and maybe you've got an ERG, a parent ERG that could be helpful there. That's awesome. So if you're looking for a keynote speaker on those topics, you've got her. She's here. Jessica, thank you again. Have safe travels. Actually, you don't have to travel to Transform.
driving on over.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you kind of deserve a big hotel stay and all that. You should
I know,
try to do
right?
that. Yeah. Well, have a great Transform. Everybody else, we'll be back next month with a new show. I'm gonna tease it a little bit. Next month is the home of National Pets Day, and so we might just be talking about fur babies, as pet owners call them. I don't have them, so stealing that. Jessica, thank you, everybody. Until next time, please take care.